So thanks to all the brilliant speakers we've already heard from this morning. Great illustrations of people working in partnership, very much locally based, to make the magic happen, really. What I'm going to talk about is from the perspective of a large-scale funding organisation. So I am the Freshwater Partnerships Manager at the Esmée Fairbairn Foundation, and my colleague Gina online, who's our Director of Learning, also working at Esmée. And really I'm going to speak a little bit about some research that we've had commissioned, which was about what we've learned from the organisations that we work with, about what makes good partnerships. And from that research that was done, what's really clear is that there are, and it'll be no surprise to any of you, that you need more time and effort and money to work effectively in partnership and genuinely with local people. And also that philanthropic funding, which is what Esmée is, are not very well set up for this at the moment. So really quickly, if you have not heard of the Esmée Fairbairn Foundation, I had not before I worked for them. They couldn't believe it, but it's true. It's a big philanthropic organisation. It's one of the UK's largest independent funders, working on natural world, fairer futures and community strength. And in all of that, we think about causes and impacts of climate change and addressing issues around diversity, equality and inclusion, because social and climate justice kind of go hand in hand. How we work, in a range of ways, and that is through funding, so the pretty obvious route, but also around convening and brokering alliance. So some of that kind of knitting, networking type stuff. We commission research into specific topics, and we try to use our influence for the good. And the way that looks in terms of the cash, because that's what people like to know about, is that we give out 40 to 50 million pounds of grants every year, and we also have a social investment allocation as well of 45 million. But arguably, one of the biggest influences that Esmée can do is actually using the endowment, which is more zeros than I can remember in size, and to encourage responsible investment. That may be where the biggest impact can be. So we commissioned an insights report in 2024, which looked at our grants between 2018 and 24, which were reviewing all the funding that had been given across all of our aims, done through interviews with organisations we fund that work in partnership. So by that we mean both formal and informal partnerships and unusual alliances, so slightly odd couples. That includes all of that. Okay, so in terms of the headline findings, that is shown there. Not going to go into them in detail. I would encourage you to have a look at the report, which the link was on the first slide. But very much key things coming out about choosing the right partners. It's very much like any relationship, right? Personal or otherwise. It can be magic, it can be misery. We all know this. So choosing the right partner, really important, and look for quality, not quantity. That's the headline. In those relationships, you've got to be clear about who's doing what and bring out the strength of each party. And for the external people working with you, you've got to be really clear about who's doing what so that you can get most effective working. We try to think about creating equal partnerships. That's something that our grantees do very well, I think. It's very easy to get very imbalanced relationships, whether that's financially or in terms of decision making. So models where it's kind of like one vote, one organisation, rather than the bigger parties having all the say is really important. And we're seeing people move more towards proper participation models rather than consultation because of that. And similarly, particularly with racial justice organisations even, it really needs to be around genuine inclusion and engagement, not tokenistic. And making time to engage, pretty obvious to all of you, takes a lot of time, and you should pay people for that. Why should they do it for free? You're going to burn them out. And it needs different kinds of skills than maybe in the environment sector we're used to. And that's really important to get the right people. Elle-Marie talked very well about that. You need to develop a shared language. So what I say and what you hear may be very different. and people's emotions come into that as well. So there's a lot around that, particularly in the arts sector, that's done very well. The strength of a partnership for all of our grantees can be that you get a bigger picture, and you can learn a lot from that, and it's really important you do. But you've got to look after your partnership. It sounds like marriage guidance counselling, I know, but you have to look after it, you have to nurture it, you can't just set off and say, how's my driving? Everyone says fine, and then you floor it and they're bouncing about. You've got to review as you go, and you've got to be flexible in your partnerships, and that what's came out really strongly. In terms of what doesn't work, loads to say about this, but difficulties around changing priorities over time. A lot of this is around risk and people's appetite for risk and how you deal with that. There is an element as well around inequity, particularly with organisations that are very small and they may be disproportionately burdened by administration or funding, and especially where you've got volunteers, they can be really burnt out. There's an over-reliance there. A lot more to say about this, but I would sort of encourage you to read the report, especially as my timer's broken. So if you can give me a wave. Is that how long have I got left? Yeah. Flipping heck. Right. Okie dokie. I've done that thing that people do. I'm going to skip these ones. I'm overseeing the Blue Spaces programme, which Laura is working on a project within that programme. And this is all about Esmée testing out how to work better in partnership. So it's around giving development funding in order to help lay the foundations and give space for people to create projects. It's about Esmée Fairbairn testing different ways of funding to see what works best for people. Finding out that mega amounts of money up front is not always a good thing. That actually might be a disadvantage to people when what they need is time. And we're trying out this program and develop this program to meet these long-term outcomes for the organisation. And the kind of things we're looking to support, I'm not going to read this out, but it's all about supporting people in place to do more good for freshwater. That's it in a nutshell. That's what all those words boil down to. And in terms of the programme, I flipping love an infographic. I could talk about this all day. I won't. It's on our website. But this is the programme that we now have of Blue Spaces. And it is very much set up to help develop projects that will be all about helping people in place and take action on freshwater, including one that Laura is running in North Wales. And you can see on the map there, we've got the Lough Erne partnership features there, not because we concocted it, we definitely didn't, but the little bit of involvement we have with them. Lough Erne partnership is exactly the epitome of what we're hoping to be able to help grow around the UK. It is exactly the epitome of it, and hats off to you for that. But what Esmée Fairbairn did was they put in a specific role in order to make this programme happen, my job, recognising that you have to put in time and resources into building these kind of programmes. And I come from a different background. I've been seconded in. I've brought different skills, very like Elle Marie, from a different sector, not grant making. And I think there is a real strength in that. Others might disagree. We shall see. So, and there's not just me involved in this within the funders that I work for. It's a whole team, and we have an involving young people's collective who are really critical in our decision making and bring a perspective that I can never have. And I've got my biases. I've worked in the freshwater sector for 30 years. There's people that have annoyed me and I've annoyed. We all got those, we come to the table with that. But these brilliant young people I work with, they bring that fresh view and they're really critical to it. So the next part of the Blue Spaces programme after the development grants are coming to an end is that we are currently looking at what comes next. Some projects will be longer term funded, some won't be. But we're currently going through that process. And we have a learning approach which is all about linking and networking all the projects together so that we get the most out of the learning for all of them and building a sustainable framework, particularly in Wales, by putting together projects that can then be each other's community. And I am going to run over a little bit. Sorry, not sorry. In terms of the learning from the Blue Spaces programme, just thinking about the principles of what the research Esmée has brought out, just to highlight a couple. Looking again at this framework we've got, the obvious one is to resource the partnership working well, you've got to put in extra money and people. Hello, me. You've got to support people with skills and learning. That's where our learning network comes in the Blue Spaces programme. And the engagement from us as a grant maker, we have to be in it for the longer term, and we have to put the time into supporting these partnerships on a do no harm basis, but also a do more than that. So there's a lot that we can do, and we changed how we funded this program. We did our assessments differently. We changed our application process. That was all to try and make this happen. They brought in a specific person into Esmée. They put aside specific funds to do this, hopefully properly. And we're doing a lot of work around joining the dots, which is the learning network, and hopefully we'll convene a big get-together next year to share more in depth at a better time pace than I'm doing right now of what we've actually learned. We're trying to encourage collaboration, not competition, so the projects are not competing against each other for funds. And we're helping people group by geography and having conversations with them that nudge them to think about diversity, equality and inclusion, that kind of thing. That conversation itself can be enough to help people start to think about those things. And we're hopefully taking time to get to know our partners, as we all know is very important in any type of relationship. And finally then, we're sort of advocating for the non-profit sector, the brilliant people that are doing this work. We're kind of sharing that joy and hoping to amplify that. So very finally, amazingly, a little exercise that I've blatantly nicked from one of our Welsh projects, a brilliant arts organisation. We don't have time to do it now, but if you think about somewhere, an aquatic place you've got one out there, think about what your favourite bit is. Where would you go for a drink in that? Maybe, maybe not. Where would you go for a drink in it? And what would you like to ask that place? And we've done this as an exercise with a room full of environmental scientists who were a bit like, oh, medium of interpretive dance, oh God. me being one of them. And it's fantastic, and it gets people to think about what they love or don't about water, and bringing together different groups, different partnerships, different backgrounds is really important. So thank you for the extra 2.5 minutes of your lives. I hope it was worthwhile, and very happy to chat more about this throughout the day.
If I could ask each of the speakers now to come up onto the stage. We've got a microphone each for you. We've got a few minutes for questions. There has been one already online. I'm going to kick us start. Come on up, Anne-Marie. And have we got Linda as well? She's coming. Guys, can you put the Slido on the screen? Okay, we're starting to get the questions onto the Slido now as well. Isn't it great to see the gender equality in this event so far? I'm feeling quite intimidated now. So let me maybe start a question that something that has come to my mind as we've been listening to you. Obviously, there's a really strong piece in terms of community engagement, and there's varied communities. But we also have varied government sectors, and we need to build capacity in the communities, but we also need to build capacity in our government sectors, because these things do not happen in isolation. Lake restoration, engaging communities, bringing back wildlife, it can't be just the responsibility of one agency or one department. How, in your opinion, can we get better collaboration, not just between those government sectors, but between the government sectors and the community organisations as well? So there's a nice easy question to start with. Anyone want to have a go? Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, I'll try and start. I think it would be really useful for government committees to have community engagement when they're discussing things that affect the environment. That tends not to happen at the minute.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There does seem to be a lack of engagement at times. Elmarie, have you any thoughts about that? I mean, you've obviously worked very much with the community sector, but I know you've had links with the government organisations as well.
Is this on? Yeah. Mike, I think for me specifically, I think we have had to do a lot of learning. I've had to do a lot of learning, a lot of understanding in terms of people's different priorities. And I think when you spend time with people, especially with the statutory organisations, you actually learn that they have a lot of very specific outcomes to meet, and I think there is a gap between people's understanding, engaging the community, trying for them also to understand what people's priorities are. I think you have to really take time to get people to understand where everybody sits and what they have to do. I think we have had to do a massive amount of work to try and build a bit of trust between the local community and the statutory organisations, because I think it's just because people don't always understand what everybody's role is, and I think you have to take time to kind of broker that, and to give people an opportunity to kind of do that. We've also spent a lot of time trying to talk about people. So whenever I'm talking about the geopark, for example, we would always talk about Grania or Martina, or, we really try and kind of make statutory agencies people, because essentially it is only people trying to enforce, or trying to kind of work towards a set of procedures.
Great, thank you very much. Jenny?
This is really the killer question, isn't it? But so I have to confess, I've worked in the public sector in England for many years, so I've dealt with sort of government and grassroots sort of work. And I would say, I think one of the most influential things in talking to ministerial types and people who determine policy and funding is having good examples of how things have worked on the ground. And in that, I mean, for example, the LELP approach is a fantastic example of why involving people in the community actually achieves much of what governments are trying to achieve, as well as, by the way, building, as well as that, coming actually at not a massive cost to the public purse. That's music to the ears of government, isn't it? Free money. So I think having really good examples of projects like LELP, where all the things Anne-Marie talked about, it's built jobs, it's built skills, it's built a sustainable set of information and connections locally. That is the best thing to be able to show to a politician why you should be interested in your community, not just because they vote for you, that there's genuine benefit all round. And I think there's a real strength in that. So I think that would be a key thing. The other aspect would be, if possible, to have a kind of hub that can amplify the voice of the community. So in Ireland, that could be the Northern Ireland Environment Link Freshwater Group, which is kind of in the process of being reinvigorated, revamped, hopefully will become a much more effective voice. And that can give a collective voice that brings what the community wants to the table in a way that it's quite hard for government to engage with otherwise. So I think those are two things that can help.
Yeah, I mean, we're being recorded, so be careful. But in Wales, NRW is our environment agency, and I would like them to recognise citizen science a bit more, because quite often it's quite defensive of, they don't often want to know the issues or the issues to be highlighted. So I think it's probably a little bit of both, of managing the citizen science so it has an impact, or it fills in those data gaps, but also making it credible. So a bit more of a link between those two things, I think, would be helpful.
Great, thank you. That just answered one of the other questions I had here on citizen science. So that's great. We've got a few questions online, and I'm aware also that we have Gina from Esmée Fairbairn as well online. So maybe Gina, could you just speak to make sure that we can hear you okay?
Yep, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. So we'll refer one of the next questions to you. Elmarie, you mentioned about the whole inclusion piece, and it actually ran as a thread through the other speakers as well, about making sure that no one's left behind, that you include everybody. Notoriously difficult. to ensure that happens, to make sure that everybody's involved, and you know, different communities who may not necessarily be engaged with water are involved. From all of the panel, maybe any experience on how we inspire and empower communities who may not normally be involved with water to get involved in these things. Gina, if you want to come in on that in a second, we'll let one of the other panels speak first.
So Mike, we have tried really hard to try and understand what motivates people. Okay, so I might be really passionate about birds or water or environment. Other people are passionate about farming. Other people are passionate about, historic features. And I think what we've really tried to do for the Landscape Partnership is to try and understand what people's passion are, and then put them in touch through that passion to kind of create a link with something else. So if I give you I will give you an example that they'll probably explain it better. We've done a curlew arts project. So we wanted to kind of engage people with water. So we actually put artists on a boat on Lough Erne to go and do some art on the loch. We also then asked those artists to go into schools, to go into communities, to kind of share that experience, and then to encourage those folks to actually go out. And I think the outcomes and the learnings from that has been significant. So I would always say, if you want to engage people in a specific subject, don't just think about how do I engage people with this one thing. We always think about what is it that motivates that person, and then you will find some way of trying to kind of link them with the thing that you want them to kind of understand a bit more.
Great, thank you so much. Gina, any thoughts from your side on terms of that inclusivity piece? How do we engage those not normally engaged with our water environments?
Absolutely. So speaking from a funder perspective, where we gather learning across all of our sort of 700 grants, which will be in communities, within the arts, in the environment sector as well. Some key things that we have spotted on this, I think, number one, start with groups who are involved, who maybe aren't the people that you'd regularly work with, but are people who are already active in this space. So for waterways, you might think about anglers, swimmers, people who are using those. You may already be doing those things. But I would say if you're struggling to make connections, things that we have seen that work are to make partnerships with groups or people who are the people you want to reach. You don't need to necessarily make those relationships yourself. Better to work with people who already hold that, particularly if you want those people need to be supported in order to get involved. If they're particularly working with a small charity or a community organisation, they have that support network already. If there are language barriers or anything like that, they can help with that. And finally, I would just say, if you're struggling to engage with different groups in a community, what we have seen and what Jenny was talking about in some of those conversations with organisations in Wales was start to think about yourself and your own organisation. Where do you have connections and where don't you have representation? You might not be able to make changes straight away. You might struggle to do that. And maybe you don't need to. Maybe what you'd need to do is partner with an organisation that does reach those people. So those are some things we've noticed from our research.
Great. I'm going to finish with one final question, because I think this maybe is a bit of a crux one, and then we're going to have lunch, so I'm aware that I'm keeping you from your lunch and we're slightly over time. But it comes from the Slido as well, and it links back to the climate change issue. Obviously, what you've seen in Scotland, Linda, was that you did this really good work, you reduced the phosphorus, but then climate change has been a big factor in changing it. And we're all really aware of that here in Northern Ireland. Is there a risk that people give up and we don't then make the effort to reduce our nutrient loads, reduce other things, and actually there's a sense of being overwhelmed by this? How do we inspire people to keep going and move forward?
Well, I think the main thing we need to do is keep people engaged. So there's hardly anybody in the room who hasn't changed a light bulb or two to help with climate change. And yet, that one or two light bulbs made no difference. It's about giving people small things they can do that create big effects in the longer term. So one of the things that came out of one of the talks that I noticed was that people are looking at zooplankton. Zooplankton eat algae, and if you have enough zooplankton, you don't get algal blooms. But at the same time, they were talking about dogs dying if they drink the water. Now, the other part of that story is that if you take your dog to the water and it goes in the water and you've treated it with some sort of flea treatment comes off in the water and kills the zooplankton. And these are things, small things that people cannot do if they understand. And what I'm finding is that when you start telling some of these unintended consequences story, do you realize if you do that, then this might happen? People are much more engaged because they feel they can do something. Another quick one, if I've got a minute, is we're looking at the use of rain gardens, which are small areas of people's gardens that you can drain water into, which means it doesn't run off of urban areas or even rural areas, and it won't flood the sewage works and therefore end up with sewage and other microbes in the water. So there are lots and lots of things that people can do on a small scale that add up to a big scale. And it's about, we can't change climate change easily, obviously, but it's about mitigating the effects, stopping the effects happening, identifying the one thing that if you change it, that climate change signal will have a lot lower effect.
So I've certainly learned something. I mean, I don't have a dog, but I had no idea that the flea treatment can actually kill zooplankton in lakes. So, I mean, I think getting those messages, and this comes back to that, building the connection between the science and the communities and making it in language that's really understandable is so important, and you alluded to that earlier on. Any other thoughts from the other panels, Jenny?
I think another aspect, and that links very much to this afternoon, something Laura does a lot of work around is, part of the thing about reducing people's stress about climate is finding ways for people to take action and take a bit of control of their own part of that, and projects like you're all working on do that. But I think also for me, I mean, at this point in life, I'm a bit like, we're all doomed. Well, I'm quite relaxed about that in a way, but that's partly because I've spent my career pushing water uphill, trying to get change, which has partly worked. But the young people in the collective that I work with, they have much more energy and enthusiasm and creativity about how to create change. And that, it sounds a bit cheesy, but that gives a lot of hope as to what may happen. But it also reinforces why it's so important to give young people a genuine voice in decisions that are being made, because they're the ones that have got to live with it. So ensuring that the environment sector, for example, is a viable career option to people who would find it hard to get in, who haven't got a degree but have got brilliant skills. That kind of aspect of supporting that and helping people take action and become involved in this, and younger people, to me, is the key to it. Whether or not I'm doomed or not doesn't matter, but they're going to be around, and they're the ones who can actually change this. So that, for me, is really the critical factor.
Yeah, I didn't go into this, but Jenny knows we've done a lot of work on this. But I think people are more clued up than they've ever been in terms of being switched off. I think we're on the tipping point of actually making a change. And I think from what Jenny said there was that people, when we're employing people or getting people involved, we're looking for drive, really, and passion. So it's not just the elite group with the doctorates and the PhDs. It's about bringing everybody along for the journey. And I think if you can link it back to somebody's home life or how it affects them, because it will affect everybody specifically, if you can find the hook that links it back to how it impacts their daily life, I think you'll be hard pushed to find people who aren't on board. So I think that's the hook that you've got to find. And I don't think we're in danger of giving up. I hope not.
No, absolutely not, Laura. And you made a very important point earlier on as well, where you say, when you can get somebody to appreciate a place, then you could get them to love what's in the place. When they love that, they will care for it. And when they care for it, they will start to inspire others around them. So it is about trying to work with those that's already engaged, because there is a small group of people that already want to make a change. But then it is trying to kind of find small little ways all the time to kind of just keep inspiring other people to kind of get on that journey as well.
Listen, guys, thank you so much. We're completely over time, but I think that's been a really interesting session. Lots of good ideas. I think the one thing that comes back to me constantly is we need to inspire people. We need to build the passion and keep pushing the water uphill. So thanks very much.